Well, my featured guest is not only the head of the Campaign for Liberty, but the author of the legislation designed to abolish the Federal Reserve, the H.R. 1207 bill before Congress. Welcome back, Dr. Paul.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Great to have you. You know, I understand that the H.R. 1207 now has, and this is exciting, 170 co-sponsors?
That bill, 1207, as of today, has 200. Maybe it'll go over 200 even on this very day. But 1207 is the one that audits the Fed, which is the very important first step to expose to the American people what is actually going on. The Get Rid of the Fed bill, I just have one or two co-sponsors on there. They're not quite ready for that, and we haven't worked on that. But we believe that opening up the books at the Fed under today's conditions is vital to the future direction of our monetary system.
Is that the 604 bill by chance?
Yeah, I think that is. I'd have to double-check, but I'm pretty sure that sounds right. But that's to abolish the Fed.
I understand you garnered some support from both Republicans and Democrats.
We're up to about 45, 46 Democrats have co-sponsored it, and a lot of the progressive Democrats who are honest people, you know, they may come from a different direction politically, but they're honest, and they want honest government, and they believe in open government. This would be a hard bill for anybody in the Congress not to vote for if it ever gets to the floor. Because under the conditions we have today and all the shenanigans that have gone on with the TARP funds and nobody knowing where the money went and what the Fed's been doing and who they've been bailing out, if there's anything that's popular these days, and that is the American people want to know what's happening and have transparency. So the big goal now is to legislatively maneuver through this Congress so we can get a vote on it.
Very good. Could you please give us a synopsis to our listeners regarding the legislation and stated goals and what you hope to accomplish?
The main thing, it is an audit bill, but the process is this. The Fed was created in 1913. It's never been audited in the true sense of the word. They have token audits, and they measure how many checks they clear and how many dollars are transferred around the country. But that's sort of academic exercise. But there's been always some populists and others who over the years have asked for audits, and in the 70s we had some rough economic times. There was a demand for transparency. So in 1978 they passed a bill that was supposed to give us the authority to audit the Fed. They gave it to the GAO, the Government Accounting Office. But when they passed the bill, they very shrewdly, and this is something we have to look out for right now, they very shrewdly behind the scenes said, yes, you now can audit the Federal Reserve except for. And then they listed all the exceptions, which were things like monetary policy, the deals they make with other central banks, and all the secret hearings they hold on monetary, all the things that you need to know about what they're doing were excluded from the audit. And what we do in this bill is we actually go back and we repeal those exceptions to the rule, and then we require within 1 year that the GAO perform an audit. We believe then reform would come. Reform may come anyway, but it's best that we know what they've been doing and why. Because I think the opposition, those who love the Fed, maybe they're even working on an international fiat currency, would be ready and willing to come up with an alternative system. So we have to, get a bill like this passed to show what kind of shenanigans they've been involved in and who are the special interests, and then maybe we can get a step toward sound money rather than just making these problems worse by allowing some UN agency or the IMF deal with this. There is a move, and I'm sure you're aware of it, where they would like to use these special drawing rights of the SDRs under the IMF as the international reserve currency, which, quite frankly, would be a disaster. Probably wouldn't work anyway.
Sure, just an end of more of our sovereignty. You rightly pointed out back in 1913 that the Federal Reserve came into being. It was in a late-night Christmas session where most of the congressmen were home for vacation at the time. You've pointed out in some of your previous writing here, it only took 2 decades for the Fed to bring about the Great Depression. They inflated away the value of our currency 96% since then. This is almost a reverse Robin Hood scenario where they're stealing from the poor just to give to the rich via controlled inflation.
And they're supposed to be the guardian of the money, and yet they are the destroyers. They are the counterfeiters. In a moral sense, they are equivalent to a counterfeiter. Maybe legally they ought to be counterfeiters too.
And do you think that a lot of this is tied in with this almost ubiquitous Keynesian school of thought that has permeated academia and the government today?
Oh, yeah, they're one and the same. It's corporatism, inflationism, and it's big government. The Federal Reserve allows governments to grow and the bills be paid for in a very secretive, sinister way. is the Congress doesn't have to be responsible and collect revenues, so they can go and fight endless wars that shouldn't be fought, and they can go and develop a welfare state. And for a good while, the members of Congress can be rewarded because they get to vote for all these special programs and never have to pay the bills. But ultimately, it catches up to us, and that's what this crisis is all about. They taxed a lot, but they can't even raise taxes. As a matter of fact, tax revenues are going down, but they're going down not for the right reason, but they're going down because people are going broke. Borrowing, how long are they going to continue to be able to borrow from countries like China and Indonesia and Saudi Arabia? Eventually, that will dry up. But they've always resorted to just printing money, monetizing the debt. A lot of people can't quite understand this, and they can't believe it either. If government spends money and they issue a treasury bill and they sell it, the Federal Reserve can end up buying this, and they bought it with money they just created out of thin air with a computer. This actually bewilders a lot of people, and because it seems so bizarre. But because we were so rich and so productive, and we were so trustworthy, so to speak, and we had such a strong military, they put a lot of trust in our system. It was an undeserved trust, but I think what we're seeing now is we're losing that trust, and eventually a monetary reform will have to come. Let's just hope we can wake up enough American people to let them understand that a commodity money is what we need, not just more paper money.
That's a great segue, I think, into what occurred last week. You'll recall the head of the Treasury, Timothy Geithner, was practically laughed off the stage by college students in China when he tried to bamboozle folks into thinking that our U.S. bonds are safe. Even college students know something is wrong with the Fed and the Treasury today, and the market seems to agree, Dr. Paul. The greenback's crashing.
It's neat. The young kids over in China knew what was going on, and they laughed. The strongest group of people who come to my rallies are the young people. High school kids and college kids are coming, and they know what's going on, and they haven't been sort of lulled to sleep like so many others. And they're really excited about studying the Federal Reserve, and almost every one of them comes to my office. I probably had half a dozen or so today that came in, and I want to know more about the Federal Reserve. That really is shocking to learn it, and they're reading about it. So now they're starting to wake up, but we still have a ways to go.
You've talked in the past how the Fed usurps the natural free markets in the U.S. and around the world by manipulating the price and the supply of money. I think it's important that people get their minds around the idea that this was just not set originally by the Constitution. This is an artificial method, which you've rightly called a counterfeiting. Where does this ultimately lead?
Well, many predicted that the financial system would collapse, that there was too much inflation, too much debt. There was a big bubble, and housing prices were too high, and that would collapse. So the financial system has collapsed. That system that was based on the dollar just really doesn't exist in many ways today. But the dollar hasn't collapsed. The dollar, people still resorted to grab and hold of dollars. So there's still been some trust in the dollar itself, even though the system has crumbled. But you can't create $2 trillion of new money every year and think that you'll be able to maintain trust in the dollar. So I think it'll end with a currency crisis where people will reject the dollar. One reason why it's not going down as fast as some would think is that generally we only measure currencies against other currencies. And quite frankly, those who understand monetary policy wouldn't necessarily say, I got to sell the dollar. I want all my money in euros or all my money in yens, because they're based on the same system. But ultimately, when trust is lost, this has happened many, many times over the century. People want to go to things of real value. They want to hold something. And, of course, those are the metals and gold and silver. So I think in the last 10 years, it's been noticeable that more and more people are recognizing that there's a monetary component of gold. For a good many years, people just sort of forgot about it, and it was strictly a commodity and not so much money. But today, I think people are recognizing this money, and you can't repeal those laws. These are the laws of economics and free will. So I think we'll have a dollar collapse, and it won't be measured in exactly the measurement against other currencies. It'll be measured in prices. And I think we're going to see a lot of high prices. And then if your dollar is very weak, you're going to see high interest rates. And that certainly won't help the very, very weak economy we already have.